Hello again, and welcome to Life in Stages. And I hope for many of you it's a welcome back. I'm Joel Greenberg, and I am thrilled that we are speaking today with a woman who has done, well, I'm going to let her tell her own story, but Sheila McCarthy is a phenomenon. And so here we are, Sheila.
No pressure.
No, please. Yeah.
Oh God.
And I noted in some background about you that you said I think your first stage appearance was at age 6 in a production of Peter Pan.
That's right.
Yeah.
I played Michael or John. Yes, yes.
So where was that and when?
Well, so I grew up in Willowdale, and then Thornhill, and my parents were going to send me to the National Ballet, and then they thought it was too far away to take me down to Maitland and Jarvis, and very opportunely that Alan and Blanche Lund opened a dance school in Willowdale. So Alan Lund was the foremost musical theater director, started the Charlottetown Festival. Yeah. Alan and Blanche were our Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire of Canada. They were fabulous. So that's where I lived for the next 12 years.
Wow.
And they I would never have survived the National Ballet, by the way, but I did sneak into the National Ballet once as on a dare and got thrown out by Betty Oliphant. So I've always had the National Ballet on my resume since then, but it was literally half of a class that I got thrown out of. But anyway, I went to the Alan and Blanche Lund School of Dance, and we were doing shows right away.
Okay.
And so I was, for some hospitals and what were then called crippled children hospitals and senior citizen homes, and so I was in front of an audience very early on, and I think Peter Pan was my favorite version.
So I mean, there's a big jump from there to when things became serious, or your own focus became different. So I'm guessing from this that being in theater, performing, was something that you were very familiar with as a child. I mean, growing up in your family, that was something that was a done thing.
Well, my father was a doctor, and my mom was an occupational therapist who quit her job the day she got married. And honestly, they were not in the arts at all. Okay. I think the only album of music they ever had was the, what was that band called? She had all that whipped cream in front. The Tijuana Brass. My mother used to dance to the Tijuana Brass. Yeah. Do you remember that? But honestly, they were not artistic people. But I think I was very captivated by watching the Nutcracker on TV, and I guess I danced around the living room, so they put me into dance class, and always supported it. But we're not in the arts, as I said. Yeah. So it was one class a week, and then it was 2 classes a week, and then it just sort of morphed into almost every day over the years. But for me, it was never. It wasn't like I was vying for the Olympics. It was just a way of life and fun, and I loved it. I guess I just was like a duck to water. So, that's where it all started.
So, was there a moment or some point when you thought, this is what I'm going to want to do? Or,
well, it's funny. I remember about 4 years later, I was cast as the Wicked Witch of the West in The Wizard of Oz, probably one of my greatest performances. And I remember the melting of the Wicked Witch. I was on 3 boxes, and I just sort of stepped down between the boxes, and all that was left on the top was my hat. And so I remember the audience laughing, and I remember that drug going into my system, and I remember thinking, oh, that's really fun. And honestly, I was certainly not the prettiest. I was, quirky and, not very, I wasn't the best dancer. I wasn't at all, but I think humor and comedy very early on, although I was quite shy, I'm told,
Mm-hmm.
but being on stage, that was an outlet right away.
Yeah.
And that was sort of maybe became kind of a secret
Yeah.
weapon of
Mm-hmm.
mine
Yeah.
early on.
And I know that you've done serious training as well. So is there a bridge between the dance classes and being in productions, and then, what led you to study in New York, for instance, or decide you wanted to be taken seriously and take the work itself seriously?
Well, as I grew older, I was really in the dance, like ballet tap jazz, and then I entered into the Charlottetown Festival in the musical theater world. Really, sort of going up the ladder, as
Yeah.
it were.
Yeah.
Dancing in a folk dance company called Le Feu Follet first, when I was 16, on tour with Alan London again. And then auditioned for Anne of Green Gables and got the funny part of Josie Pye, and took a few singing lessons, which I hated. And I used to just talk through my singing lessons because I just went, I could sing loud in about a good 3 notes, but really had no interest in becoming a trained singer, as it were. But then I realized that the musical theater was great, but that I felt limited by it. I wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was just accidental. Really, I just thought, okay, I'll audition for Uta Hagen in New York. That would be fun. And I remember I did a monologue from 10 Lost Years, the wonderful Canadian play, and being very, very nervous. And she asked me, Uta Hagen asked me, and she was the doyenne of teachers in New York. It was either the Method,
Sure.
and it was Lisa Asberg, or it was Stella Adler. I chose to audition for Uta Hagen, and she saw my nerves. I told her I was a dancer, and she loved dancers because she loved the fact that we were disciplined, having been in the dance class every day, that, you have to do your pliés before you do your,
Yeah.
And I think that she really admired dancers. And so anyway, she gave me a shot, and I got into her class and, did some pretty awful work, but opened my mouth for the first time.
Yeah.
And lived in New York, and went on a Canada Council grant for a year and studied, and that was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
It was terrifying, really, but I did it.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny, because I've never felt like all that brave, but I look back and I think, well, no, I guess I did it. I guess I, in spite of myself, kept going.
Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, I never could think of anything else that I really wanted to do, like job wise, I guess. So, I just kept going.
Yeah, no, and I think for all of us, it's the much used cliche that if there's something else you can do, you should do it. But it is true. I mean, people who stick with this don't stick with it because they are, they're unsure, or that they are trying to convince themselves. You can't convince yourself of staying in this kind of business. You either,
no, I mean, I think that if I had convinced myself, I wouldn't be doing it, and believe me, I teach and I tell kids, if there's anything else you really want to do it, because I mean, even now, even today, I'm not sure what my next job is. Like, and people go, "Oh my God, you work all the time." Well, in fact, we are constantly reinventing ourselves, and I don't know.
Yeah.
And that is not for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've done a fair amount of teaching too, and I know. I mean, the charm of meeting young potential professionals or hopefuls who, when you mention exactly what you're saying and you say that back to them, or you suggest that if there is something else, you might want to give yourself that opportunity. And I guess the older I get, and they don't seem to get any older at all, I can tell by the look that, they know better. And I was the same way.
Me too. Like it never occurred to me to do anything else.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of it was happen chance. A lot of it just kept, I guess I learned to nurture later on, but most of it was just luck and being in the right place. All those cliches are quite true. And the feeling that, I'll just throw my hat in the ring. I'll just try, So, I guess that culminates over, you look back over the years and you think, well, I guess that was a good thing to do, to keep going. But I was, when you're younger too, you're not as fearful as you are when you get older. You're not as sort of, you don't think of, you're sort of stupid, really. You don't think about things as much.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's true for you. I mean, I certainly was not somebody who had any time or interest in reflecting. I was just busy trying to figure it out. Yeah. And then as you find that you begin thinking back, that doesn't really help. I mean,
No. I mean, I look back to my 20s, I think I was just interested in boyfriends and being part of the group. Like I don't think I really got sort of hungry or ambitious until my 30s, like where I kind of went, oh, okay, I really want that job. I'm going to really go for that. And I'm going to have to really, learn those lines and get it and do the work.
Yeah.
Because my training at the Allen and Blanc, it was disciplined, but it was fun. Maybe that's good. It wasn't killer. I didn't do exams in ballet. I didn't do Cicchetti exams. I didn't, I went to a free school in high school. I had parents who said, well, you want to go to Morocco when you're 16? Well, okay. And I went with two guys, Murray and John Ball. And my dad's favorite expression was, well, I'm glad you went with two balls and not just one. I mean, I was 16 and years later they went, what were we thinking? But it was the 70s. It was a very different time.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of, openness, wasn't there? And so anyway, I went to free school. I sort of fell into things and I had a really great time. So,
So when you're talking about what you were just referring to with your parents and they're giving you license to do things that in hindsight they wondered why.
They shuddered at, like they did.
As a parent yourself, have you been in a similar situation?
Yes, I yes, very much so. And I kind of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. We've let them do it. And, it's funny because now I'm a helicopter grandparent, very, but as parents, no, we were, gave them I love that word license, gave both my daughters quite a bit of license too. And I trusted them. And that was the thing. My parents trusted me. I mean, I was on the road across Canada when I was 16.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Yes.
I mean, the very worst thing I ever did was steal a pillow from a hotel. No, I was not. And it was, the drugs were all around me. It was hippie time. It was all those things. I was okay.
Yeah.
Because I think they trusted and went, my father's rule was, how we feel about it, but you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
Yeah, good advice.
Yeah.
And you go, well, I have no choice then. I have to do what you want me to do. But they were strict in a really brilliant way. And I guess I tried to do that with daughter. I mean, they tell me things they did now and I go, what?
Sure.
What? You did?
But they knew not to tell you then.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So just going back a bit, so you were in New York for a year, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's it like to come back after you've had that experience? What are you bringing back with you?
I would say there's an aggressiveness to being down there that is in the American DNA. Not, that's generalizing, but I think for the most part, that the difference between us is, sort of Canadians look in, comparing ourselves to everybody, whereas Americans I would say that Canadians look out comparing themselves to everybody. Americans don't think about us.
Yeah.
They don't, they just don't.
Yeah.
And so I think that wore off on me. I came back to Canada, and I would say every time I've gone to LA or New York or something over the years, I come back with a bit of that sort of aggressiveness that is good and bad. It is it's good. It's cutthroat down there.
Yeah.
There's so many more actors. It's just so much harder to get a job than it is here, relatively.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what I came back with, was a kind of moxie.
Yeah.
And, there was still that feeling that, oh, you've been in the States, so you must be good. There's that thing.
Yeah.
And why aren't you moving there, and blah, blah, blah. But, I think that I came back with a slightly more aggressive attitude towards the business.
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, it's interesting that you say that. My older daughter studied in New York. When she finished McGill, she really wanted to go to New York, and she auditioned and got into school. But when she was auditioning, I remember my wife was in New York for one of her auditions, and my wife was with a friend. And when my daughter went in, the friend said, "She is so Canadian. She's so sweet." And Phyllis said that, sort of sitting in the room, she said you could just feel the other people who were waiting to go in. She said you could just feel you could see and feel the difference.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the number of times I've been in waiting rooms in Los Angeles for the sitcoms and the funny girl parts, and just feeling so Canadian and then I thought, wow, I'm projecting this kind of weird girl, quiet, weird, quirky thing, because that's how I'm feeling. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So, but then those are women sitting in the waiting room for the same part who never work, but they're noisy. They're just noisy. And I used to just hide in the bathroom and just go, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. You just keep going. It can be very difficult combating that. I'm sure your daughter has talked a lot about that.
Oh, sure.
That, because ultimately we aren't that. We're much more critical and we're much more, I think, discerning and less secure.
Yeah. So you've done the training, and you came back, and you're working and work probably with a very focused way of approaching the work.
Well, yes, I mean, I what I loved about Uta Hagen was, and because having been a dancer, she's very practical in her approach to. She loves props. She loves the emotional life coming out of physical things, which really worked for me. Like, it wasn't, I have to think about having killed my mother, and I actually have to kill my mother to play I've killed my mother. Uta Hagen was not that. She was very nuts and bolts about, and that really spoke to me. I love that, and I love the idea of that. So I came back, and I went right back into musical theater.
Okay.
Great, because I got a job. And then, and that people always go, how have you done well, I got a job, and I auditioned for something and I got a job. It's not always your choice, right? And that just sort of kept going in Toronto.
Yeah.
Very, very soon after that, I got a job oh my God, in a musical of Harvey,
Hmm.
the
Say hello to Harvey.
Say Hello to Harvey.
Yep.
Donald O'Connor.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And it was Broadway bound.
Of
That was
course.
my big Broadway break.
We'll start in
And
Toronto and then we'll take it to New York, right?
we'll take it to New York. And that was my big stepping stone to New York.
Okay.
And then the whole thing imploded, including the set. and then I always say the last thing I heard was the producer, like years later, was doing a musical in Miami about Watergate, which of course never saw the light of day. But it was not the stepping stone we hoped it would be.
Yeah. No, that much used plan will start in Toronto and then go to New York. It's like a kiss of death. I mean, like, it happens. I mean, it has happened, but mostly it hasn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, Uta Hagen had an enormous impact on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as you're working, are there other people who sort of found you, or you found each other, who really did make a difference?
Oh, yes. Oh my God. First of all, actors.
Mm-hmm.
Brent Carver was an enormous influence on my life. He was in Charlottetown playing Hamlet when I was a Corinne, and became great friends. But I just was, I mean, I used to copy him, because somebody said to him once, "Oh, you remind me of Sheila McCarthy." And it's like, God, he wanted to kill me. I said, "Oh my God." But definitely Brent was a huge influence. I just, like, he wasn't of the planet, Brent.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the stars, and his talent was so ephemeral and so unknowing. And it was just, oh my God, I just loved standing on the wings watching him work.
Yeah.
But I would say, in terms of directors, Robin Phillips found me, who was, former artistic director at the Stratford Festival. And I was in a musical at YPT called Really Rosie, and I played Rosie, and a Morris Sendak musical, beautiful little show, and kind of playing this bossy boots Rosie. I tried to actually direct that show a couple years ago, and they said, no, it's got too much bullying in it. And I went, you're kidding me. Oh my God, it's such a great little show.
Yeah.
But anyway, Robin saw the show, and he was putting together a company. Actually, before that, it was a play. Yeah, it was before that. He was putting together a cast for Farther West, John Morell's play.
Yeah.
Beautiful play. And I think Marty Meriden was supposed to play the part, and she got something else. So he saw me in Really Rosie, and he cast me as a challenged prostitute of 1890s named Nettie. And it was a perfect part for me. Like, it was just one of those, like, it was, and I didn't have to say very much because he terrified me. I remember the first 2 days of rehearsal, he wouldn't even let me say anything, and he just danced around me. Robin was, he was a complicated, controversial director for sure.
Yeah.
But for me, he unlocked so much in me, and cast me in parts that I was not ready to play, for sure. Like Lady Teasel at the Stratford Festival with Bill Hutt. I mean, I was, just not ready to play that. Yeah. But he put together this theater company in London, the Grand, and invited me to be part of that company. And that was really like a huge watershed moment for me, in all those parts. Yeah. It was great. It was amazing. And he was a huge influence on my life.
Right.
And, I know his reputation. He was difficult, and he was all those things. But for me, I remember Jackie Burroughs, the wonderful Jackie Burroughs, said to me once, "Oh, you're his muse right now. It won't last." I was like, okay.
All the best. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. You're probably wrong, Jackie. I'm sure it'll last. But she was right. And then he moves on. Right. But for the time, we had an incredible moment together, and I credit even now. When I'm doing something, and I go, what would Robin have me do? Because usually it's the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
What I might think to do or something.
Yeah.
So he was enormous.
And you were with him for several years, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did that. I did the show in Calgary. Then we did a whole year at the Grand. And then he brought me to Stratford to do School for Scandal.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that was it. But yeah, over the years, and he remained a great comrade. And he was, for those of us who got the best of him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had reigns of terror, because he was that old school British thing.
Yeah.
I remember I did Tonight at 8:30 at the St. Lawrence Center.
Yeah.
And he directed it, and it was a 3-act, right? It was Red Peppers, Hands Across the Street, Still Life.
Yeah.
And I had Hands Across the Sea, I had the lead in, and I couldn't really get on stage. And he said, I don't want British accents. And Susan Wright and I did nothing, but we sounded like the Queen of England. And at one point in rehearsals, he put a stop to it all. He said, yes, I'm cutting Hands Across the Sea because you can't do it. And we're just going to do 2 acts. I was like crippled with fear.
Yeah.
And the whole company's there.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow, he's canceling the whole act because of me. Wow.
Yeah.
And I put my hand up, and he said, yes, darling. And I said, well, Robin, I understand. Yes. Honest to God, the pee is running down my legs. I understand that you are doing this, but I know that there's one line in the act that works. And he looked at me and smiled. He sent everybody home, and we spent the whole day on that one line doing country and western and opera and all his tricks, and I never really got it, but he kept it in the show. And when the reviews came out, big picture of me, perverse casting by Robin Phillips. This critic would rather see Joan Rivers do Wuthering Heights than Sheila McCarthy do Noel Coward.
And you're on your way. Wow.
Honest to God, I never read another review.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it clearly indelibly in my brain.
Yeah.
So, and Robin came into the dressing room. He says, darling, I would really love to see Joan Rivers play Wuthering Heights. I think that would be fantastic. And I just go, oh my God.
Yeah. Now critics, some really have left their stamp on piles of crap everywhere.
Oh yeah, and I try not to read them. I mean,
sure.
Which killed my father. Like he was all about reviews.
Sure.
And my mom was so mad. She phoned. She phoned. It was the Toronto Sun, and it was Bob Pennington who gave that review. The Toronto Sun. Okay, and my mother phoned him and gave him hell for giving me a bad review.
Well, good for her.
I know.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. You mentioned, I know that you do teaching, and are you currently teaching or recently?
Yeah. Well, when I was shooting a TV series called Little Mosque on the Prairie, which was great. It was I got it when I was 50. I mean, I got a TV series at 50. Yay. Brilliant. Bring it on. Fabulous. It was 4 months of the year. And I thought, well,
yeah,
what am I going to do the rest of the time? Because I am someone who really kind of likes to be busy. So I reached out to National Theatre School, to Sherry B, and she invited me to come for a week to teach the fourth-year kids film. Because they don't, a lot of the theater programs don't do very much on camera stuff, which I think is a shame because, if you want to have a career, you want to be able to do everything. And I think that that's what we're also allowed to do in Canada, way more than you are in the States, is move around the mediums.
Yeah.
And so that was really fun for a week. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just went, okay, it's 5 days. And it was super fun. And I thought that was really great. And I'm sure you feel this teaching too, that after doing it for so long, I knew a lot more than I thought I did.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the feeling of it not being about me. Mm-hmm. It was that I could just focus on them.
Yeah.
And that really was great. So I ran into John Bourgeois, and he was at Humber, and he invited me to come out and start a on-camera comedy class once a week with the kids, because he said that was lacking in their program. Yeah. So I kind of created this class of starting with silent film and just working through the decades, because I find that a lot of the kids, they've never heard of Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin.
Sure.
And they really need to know who these masters are. So, and it was a great way to start a comedy class with no dialogue, just silent scenes. Yeah. So it was super fun. And I did that for about 10 years out there, and I really enjoyed it. And then the program changed and things got busy. But out of that, I did some musicals at Sheridan, which was just so much fun, because the kids out there, and I started to direct.
Yeah.
And what's great about directing students is they kind of have to do what you tell them to do. No, unlike actors, working actors, when you're working with students, so I was in an ivory tower at Sheridan, and they adored me because when I'd say, they just park and bark, and I'd go, that's good, just go faster, or whatever. It was beautiful times out there, beautiful. So I really, really enjoy directing now.
Yeah.
Possibly more than acting.
Yeah. And was it an evolution rather than a plan?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it was to fill those 6 months.
Yeah.
8 months, and it definitely. Yeah. And I started, just with 1 week, and then it just sort of morphed into. I mean, I think I've never been a full-time teacher at 5 days a week.
Sure.
So there's a certain novelty in teaching, in dropping in and teaching, and leaving. It's kind of like being a grandmother. You get to leave. You get to leave.
Yep.
And now directing is different, because I've been doing a lot more of that lately.
Yeah.
And that's been I love it. That's been a wonderful challenge.
Yeah. How do you well, I don't know if you do, when you're directing, having spent so much of your career acting, do you ever find yourself performing for the actors that you are directing?
I try not to.
Yeah.
When I do it in a really funny, over the top. Don't do what I'm doing because this is super bad. Clown, like show-offy way, without being threatening. You know what I mean? Like I definitely will, and then I go, well, that was bad, because the more I direct, the less I want to act.
Yeah.
I remember Jamie Lee Curtis, I did a movie with her a million years ago, and she'd sort of stopped acting. She said, I'm just sort of more interested in being myself.
Right.
I really don't want to. I'm not really interested in, and like, she has proved that wrong, because her work has gone on. But I kind of, when I'm directing, I feel that way. Like I've been asked to do a couple of things on stage, especially like film and TV. I still love, because I love being on set, and I love being in a close-up. Like, I love all that. I'm less interested in being on stage right now.
So let's talk about that. I mean, what is it about film and television that
Well, I think what's great about, like, for instance, a TV series is great because it marries theater with film. You're always doing something, but you're always doing something different, which is the film part.
Mhm.
But you're part of a family, which is the theater part. And I just love that. I love this. I love you're with the crew all day long. You're with people who you love all day long, and yet you get to do something different all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's a luxurious thing that every actor loves to do.
Mhm.
Um, and it's sort of like being in the trenches, being on a night shoot in a movie
Mhm.
with a bunch of people, and you're freezing cold, and the you're surviving, and all. There's a kind of, I don't know, being on the edge
Mhm.
of that I really love. There is a kind of terror that your close-up's coming up and you've got one shot and they're losing the light, that I don't hate. Um, Whereas I have become slightly more trepidatious about being on stage and screwing up. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think that comes with a lot of actors on stage. That's not a comfort zone for me
Yeah.
anymore, whereas I kind of thrive on it in film.
Yeah. And you've had a really rich film career, right? I mean,
Well,
you have. I mean, it's you with I heard the Mermaids Singing
yeah, yeah,
among others.
yeah. That
Uh,
was life changing. I mean,
yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing in that movie, by the way. I was just like, what? I'm so tired. I just want to go home. People go, well, that must have been great. You go, no. I was like, what? I hate movies. I'm freezing. I'm cold. It's 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm just, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I just, nobody is going to want to watch this movie. Like, this is so weird. And so, but yeah, it was life changing for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I realize now I should have been much more grateful during this. People say, would you like to do a TV series playing that character? I go, no, no, no. They go, now, yes, yes, yes. Please. Oh my God, bring it on.
Yeah.
But, you know, listen, for every movie that I've done,
Yeah.
there have been 10 that I didn't get. So
Right.
those are the ones I think about.
Yeah.
You know, my very first audition for a big American movie was, um, with Kevin Costner, Field of Dreams.
Hmm.
I was flown to LA and screen tested with Kevin Costner.
Mm.
And I had a 6-day-old baby, and I was like a deer in the headlights. And it was absolutely shattered when I didn't get it. I
Mhm.
couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe that I didn't get that part. I still wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. What? Why didn't I? They said I wasn't that I wasn't Midwest enough.
Okay.
Whatever the hell that means.
Yeah. Yeah.
But people go, "Oh, you've done so much." Well, I'm almost 69 now, and so I've stayed with it.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, when you stay in Canada, you have to bounce around the mediums or you won't work. Like, you can't just do one thing.
Yeah.
And I think I've tried very hard to carve out every single one of them in order to keep working.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's just luck too. Like, I just in the States, you get your one sort of vaudeville hook, and that's what they want you to do.
Mhm.
They pigeonhole you. I was the quirky girl down there. That's what you do.
Yeah.
And you get your one TV series. And, there's a few people who have, broken that system, like Julie Louis-Dreyfus or somebody like that, who's said, no, I'm going to do another series. Jane Curtin, this quiet, sly woman, has done like 6 incredible TV series.
Yeah.
That's rare.
Yeah. You talked about, and you're talking about periods where people make assumptions that you are working nonstop, and that you're not. So what is that like? I mean, I'm sure it doesn't.
Well, you know what? I had to learn to not diminish that.
Yeah.
Because, but at the same time, it, and I have to try to remember that the body of work. When I self-tape for something and I feel like I'm not bringing my A game, that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I just feel like even after all these years, confidence is super important. And I think, I try to teach that in young actors. And when I see that, maybe that's why I like directing and teaching so much now,
Yeah.
because I don't have to worry about feeling that way anymore.
Yeah.
I have a kind of blind faith when I'm wearing the director hat or the teaching hat, that I kind of don't have as much of as an actor. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
or maybe I've just done it for so long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that it's in our DNA to go, oh yeah, but I didn't get it, to say, oh well, I'm not working right now. Like, to diminish. And I think, you know what? I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't, like, it is, I'm proud of all the work I've done. And I'm proud that I've gotten to do what I've had to do. And I've worked with incredible people over the years.
Yeah.
And, now, like, for instance, when I got Women Talking with Sarah Polley, that really changed. That was like another Mermaids for me, because we were all coming out of COVID. And during COVID, I don't know about you, but I was like really happy. I was like, you know what? I was waking up in the morning going, well, maybe I'm done. Like, I'm good. Like, I'll just, shop less, and I'll just conflate everything in my life. But maybe this kind of lack of adrenaline and nerve and all that stuff that comes in our business.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not missing that.
Yeah.
I'm not missing getting dressed up and going out. I'm kind of loving being quiet. And then Women Talking happened.
Yeah.
And the bar was so high. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. I had to show up at the Olympics every day, and it was like working with all those huge movie stars and get over that and just try and focus and do work. It was life-changing, that experience. And it kind of made me realize that I'm in another snack bracket now.
Right.
I'm an old bird snack bracket now. And there's lots of parts. Like, it's interesting. So,
but isn't that great? I mean, it's great that when either when you're not expecting it, or even if you might be, that change can continue to happen. Mm-hmm. I mean, I certainly know, like, from my own experience, at a certain point saying, if I do, like, I can't do one more cabaret show. This goes back many years. Because I've already done, the titles change, but it's the same thing again and again and again. And you think, I certainly thought, I will never get anything but this. And if I don't stop doing this, then I won't. It's we are hard. Yeah, it's hard. And we're coming to the end of our time here, Sheila. And is there anything, like, any advice that you would like now? I mean, this is really about reflecting back, that would have been good for you to know, or that you might have appreciated when you were much younger? Whether or not you would have been able to take it seriously or understand its weight?
I think I have, all these years, have thrived on walking that line between I really can't do it and then doing it.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I would have changed that and tried to, I wish someone had told myself, oh, get over yourself. But you know what? I think that nerves is just talent trying to get out. So in fact, the amount of stress I've put myself through over the number of years is why I keep doing it. Yeah. And it's I'm not really answering your question.
No,
I think that if someone had said to me, just, be louder, be to stop worrying.
Yeah.
Stop,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that, in fact, the worry has that place.
Mm-hmm.
It can be crippling, but I think that also that place has kept me hungry, and I think it's kept me pretty normal. Like I think, my parents would say, well, don't get that head too big. Whenever I, was going to LA, my father would say, well, you're turning your back on your Canadian career. And or if I stayed in Canada, he goes, well, there goes Hollywood. And I go, that was how I grew up, with feeling like, well, okay, I'm just going to try and keep going and please my father, and show him that, I can. And maybe it's humbling coming from a family like that.
Well, sure. And I think some, again, just in my own story, I think that you have to be old enough to not worry. I mean, there's always a degree of that, but it's like, when as a director, I hope to God I never said, just go have fun with it, as though that's a thing anybody does or can do. And if you're saying to a young actor, worry less, I don't know what that even means, what that could possibly mean.
You're teaching me something, because I have just finished working on a show, and there was a couple of big worriers, and I think I did make that mistake and sort of undercut their worry instead of acknowledging it and going, so I learned from that. Like it is because it's part of what we do. You know what I mean? Yeah. How many people have said to us over the years, I could never do what you go. Or I sit in an audience and go, how the hell did they learn all that? Like how, my God, I just saw Rosemary Dunsmore in practically a one-woman show last week, and I went, oh my God, how did she do it?
Yeah.
And that is, it's part of what we do. But I think at this point in my life, like, hey, listen, if somebody were to say, here's a show, do it, blah, 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 I might never say no, right? We never say no. But I really am enjoying being on the other side of things. It's fun.
That's great. Yeah. Sheila, this has been wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to all of our listeners, thank you for joining us again. And if this is your first visit to Life in Stages, thanks for coming. I'd like to also suggest that you check out the archive of our various episodes, and you'll meet many of our country's finest performers and writers and directors. And take a moment, if you would, and let everybody you know about Life in Stages, where to get it, how to follow us, and if you are so inclined and are feeling generous, you can make donations, which will help to sustain the running of this podcast. And if you would do this, if you go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Life in Stages, the information is there for making donations that are gratefully accepted. And I look forward to talking to our next guest in a couple of weeks. Thanks.